Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you'll hear a lot for various different reasons, but we're going to talk about why you want to take time at the end of the year, look back over how much you've accomplished throughout that year. Not so much focusing on what you haven't yet done, like you'll get to that the first part of next year and go from there. But looking back over what you've done, so often we forget what we've done. We don't remember. So we tend to get into this kind of a grind, we always have to be hustling because we feel like we haven't accomplished anything. Whereas if we sit down and we say, we'd like, take a look. So the Seneca goes through her Facebook posts. I go through my planner, look and see, I wanted to do this, and this year. And I did, these two things and these other five, which tends to be two.
Yeah, we have to have room for random, for sure.
Yeah, that's, that's our personalities. So,
Yep.
Yeah. But, however you keep track of that, it's good to look back and see. And that's, we were doing this in preparation for our end of the year call in our class. And that's, I was like, oh, wow. It's like, I'd known I had done some things, but I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of a lot of books you actually wrote this year. So, and several other things. I'm, oh, right, that was this year, kind of feels like 3 years ago, but no, that was just earlier.
It's just a really long year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't remember stuff either. And it's like I always have to use my assistant and go, what happened?
Yeah.
And then I thought I did nothing this year because I was on Shemitah, which is the take every 7th year off. So I wasn't completely off, but I did as little as possible. I did no projects and still grew my business by 24% over last year. So for doing nothing or next to nothing.
She has staff, just so you know.
Yes, I have systems and I have staff.
Yes.
So, you have to have those things in place, but then you can just, who takes a year off?
Yeah.
Nobody in our society.
Nobody. Well, that's rare to take any time off.
Right.
More. So, and that's
why I do it once every 7. So.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think that part of why taking specific rest periods. So obviously there's the Sabbath, taking one day off a week, and then you can do every 7th week or every 7th month and every 7th year. You can do them in kind of denomination, increments. And for me, I take usually, not always, a day a week off, and sometimes. Most of the time I try for that to be Sundays, sometimes, but it's flexible. So I'm not religiously adhering to a particular time frame. But I can tell if I haven't done it. If I've done something else, then it starts catching up with me pretty quick. And for me, those days, even though I'm not thinking, I try very hard not to think about anything. I try even not to get on my computer because then it's too easy to get back to work. And my eyes appreciate tech-free days. So, but it helps. I get more into that grinding, like, oh, there's the next thing and there's the next thing and there's the next thing, versus when I take a Sabbath day and when I take time off, I do usually a week, a quarter. Currently I'm working up to more frequently, but so I am able to more, I think, connect with God's best for me and for my business. I tend to be able to kind of get that, maybe not 30,000 foot view, but I have a broader understanding or view. And sometimes I'll just get better strategies. Like I'm thinking, oh, I need to do this. And it's like, hey, if you pivot 5 degrees, actually, that's going to make a world of difference. So And that rest helps you to do that. And you can't, when you're in the slog, you just can't, um, you can't do that. So,
Yeah. And I was reading a long time ago, or I was listening to a thing, and it was talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your, typically they would say rest and digest, it's your de-stress time versus your sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. So anyway, apparently it's bad for your sympathetic nervous system if all you do is just look at all the stuff that you haven't done yet and you never stop and reflect on what you've accomplished. So, building in time like now at the end of the year for just taking stock and looking back and celebrating. And I mean, I call it revelry because that's sometimes what it feels like, where I just sit on the couch and I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. And I don't do that very well, but once in a while, something will grab me that much. And
yeah. Well, and that's, just in the biblical calendar throughout scriptures, there are far more feast days than fast. So I think God's big on celebrating. And I think that he celebrates us, and I think he enjoys celebrating with us when we join with him in celebrating what we've done. So, and you can't celebrate if you're still striving and grinding and scurrying. So it shifts you out of that. So is our theory on.
well, yeah, it does. And then like you were saying, it shifts you out of that place when you do go back in and you're hitting it hard. You're doing it from a different place, not out of, I don't remember how you said it, but all these things that are so good before we hit record. But
yeah. Well, and I think it's more a instead of striving to gain something, you're working from a place of, I have already achieved X, there is more that I want to do, so I'm going to work towards that. But you're not trying to and I can't remember, there's a lot of times we do that as Christians and as people just in general, where we will do things in order for God to accept us. And even if we know in our heads that no, we're already accepted, we don't have to do that, that's still what we're doing. That's just part of being, I think, as on a sinful people on a sinful planet. In these days, that's just kind of the cultural mindset, is you have to do more or you're unacceptable. Versus if you're able to step into that, no, I'm an accepted child of God. I have already been accepted. I do these things as someone who is accepted, as someone who can celebrate and is celebrated by the living God. Then there's so much peace and rest in that, even though you're still active, you're still working. It's a whole different, it feels completely different. It may look the same, but it feels completely different. So, and I think that's part of when you're able to step away, and that's partly why God created the Sabbath for us, was so that you could do that, so that you recognize that, oh, the world does not end if I take a day off.
Yeah, that is totally a faith thing.
Yeah.
You exercise it by starting small with Sabbath, and then, at some point, maybe, if you set a goal to go do Shemitah, which you have to be intentional about doing that ahead of time. So you set everything up so that you can do it. I mean, I would consider that an accomplishment, because I'm not somebody that could ever stop working before. So
yeah. And that's, and for me, from this perspective, I'm like, I think I'd like to do that next time. I have no idea what is that? I can't wrap my head around what would that be like. So, but the more I have kind of increased my faith and built that rest muscle, and ironically, then the more I'm like, okay, well, but and again, just like, it's not like Seneca just sat on the beach all year. I mean, she did things, but not.
I have a whole list of non-businessy things that I went and did, and then some of them kind of became a new business, which I
Mhm.
just started. So
Yeah. So even at that, God spoke to her and led her in that time so that she was prepared to do new things when she came back or came out of Shemitah, or
yeah,
coming back from it doesn't seem like the right way to put that.
I don't know how you put that.
Yeah. So
It's just something that's so counterintuitive, and I mean, even in
Mhm.
Jewish culture, it's not really done. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't have a whole lot of people in this with me, or models to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So and I've got
Oh
6
yeah.
years
I mean,
to
there's no
go.
real right way to do it or wrong way to do it. You just figure out
Mhm.
what's doable and do it.
Yeah. And figure out what God's called you to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
Oh,
I
I have a book. I wrote a book on the Shemitah if you do want some kind of something to go off of. It's called Shemitah for Christians. It's on Amazon. And I wrote that before I went on Shemitah. So yeah.
Yes. And we will put the link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I worked real hard to get that done before I took off. So
And she was successful.
yeah. Yeah. So I have a whole list, and there's odd stuff on there.
Of things you have accomplished this year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
really random.
Well, and I
things
think
that we do.
it's good to look at both personal things as well as in your business. Like look at your
Yeah.
life as a whole, everything that you've accomplished. So because it's
Yeah, when I wasn't doing business, I got a whole lot more personal stuff accomplished.
Mhm.
And for years I was asking God, when am I going to get to? Yeah, well, those are built in. Who knew?
Yeah. He's like, well, I established the system a little while ago. You might want to check
Right.
it out.
Yeah, this has been in place for a while here.
Yeah, he's usually right about these things.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and I didn't take a Shemitah year. Um, but it's still, and just like I was like, oh, well, there were several things on there that surprised me that I had forgotten. Like, oh, well. So just like the number of books that I wrote and or published. So some of them getting to them to the publishing point has taken a while. But I was surprised at how many.
How many was it?
10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Now some of them were like I did the omnibus I have a series of 14 books, and I did an omnibus. So that was more a compilation. So a new format of existing material. And one of them is taking, I'm co-writing with another person. So I'm basically combining his book and 2 of mine into one. So because we each have individual pieces of the thing we're wanting to help people to do. So, and then as like, oh, that works.
Mhm. Yeah, collaborating. I think that's a kingdom thing that
Mhm.
surprisingly few people do.
Yeah. Well, and just like, and we're still like figuring out like exactly how all that's going to work and how it's going to work together. But I'm like, oh, this may be more of a business for me than I had anticipated. So, which in a good way, but as opposed to, oh, I'm just helping a guy do a thing, and that's kind of, So,
Yeah, well, that's God too. You get
yeah,
suckered in, and then
yes,
it blows up.
yeah, yeah. And it tends to fit in, interestingly enough. So that's always handy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So we hope that you take time to go back through and as Seneca said, ask your friends, ask your family, if the people that work for you, hey, what all did we get done this year? So go back through your calendars, however it works for you, those are kind of what we do. So, but there's any number of ways to go through and do that. So one of the things
Yeah.
I've always kind of kicked around doing, I've heard people do, like if you had a jar, so every time you accomplished something, you wrote it down on a piece of paper and you put it in the jar, and then you took them all out. So I think that would be really, really cool. We should start that. Yeah. I'm not sure I would remember to put things in the jar.
Like, what are we going to get done between now and New Year's anyway? We can just get a jar out now. Yeah.
Get a jar. Yeah. Yeah. So, but however it works for you, then definitely take those times and do it more frequently than the end of the year. I also like to do that at the quarter. So I'm more in the mindset of, what have I done? What I still need to get done at that point. But it still is kind of like a time to stop and reassess. So, and to celebrate what you've gotten done, because that's a big thing. Any step forward towards what God has gifted and called you to do is a great thing. So a great and wonderful thing, and requires effort on your part to do. So it deserves celebration.
Yeah.
All righty. We'll see y'all later.